Welcome to another community conversation. I'm Michael Witch for LMC Media, and on the screen with me is Maureen Meehan. Maureen is a Larchmont artist and a painter, a jewelry maker, and a teacher, and she will be the featured artist in this year's Larchmont Art Festival. Hello, Maureen.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Fine. I said you're going to be the featured artist. Unfortunately, I understand now that it's going to be a virtual arts festival this year.
It is, which is kind of sad, I have to say. The Larchmont Arts Festival has been around for about 20 years, serving the tri-state area. It's a really great environment. It's a great event. They've recently just put all this renovation into Constitution Park. It's so beautiful. So yeah, I'm a little sad that it won't be there this year, but it'll be there next year.
And I heard they're going to return you next year as the featured artist. But
they will.
Right now we have a chance to talk to you virtually. So why do you do what you do? You're a full-time artist?
I am.
Why art instead of something else?
Well, I can go all the way back just to high school, and certainly without question, the academics were somewhat interesting, but there was absolutely no comparison the minute I started painting and drawing of my own investment and my interest. So it was much more of a challenge. It just was an exploration that got me a lot more excited than math or science. And then there was like an odd sequence of events in my senior year of high school where my teacher, in order to pass, demanded that we take the entrance exam to the School of Visual Arts. And I was accepted. And honestly, when life does odd things, you should just pay attention. But that year was when Ronald Reagan, you had to get into college by January or you would lose your Social Security benefits. Oh. And it literally was the only school I'd been accepted to because I did an early application. And so I went. And that was the beginning of the rest.
And it served you well all these years?
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, it's been wildly fulfilling. And there's been no question that it has sustained my interest and my heart and all that. So yeah, I feel very fortunate.
As we talk, we're going to be looking at some samples of your painting and jewelry. Nothing specific that we could talk about right now, but in general, you settled in the Larchmont community. How does the community feed your art?
So that's an interesting piece in the puzzle in terms of I had lived for 18 years where I grew up in Queens and 25 years in Tribeca. And then I came here, and certainly being very spoiled by everything at your fingertips in New York, I didn't know what I was getting into when I came up here. Interestingly, the community and the town ended up filling me more than I ever could have imagined because I ended up teaching painting, which I had not done before. I became friends with Fran Mannix, who owns Creative Corner here in Larchmont. She is a very funny character and said, you're going back to work and you're going to teach kids how to paint. And it really opened up my world. I have so much gratitude for the teaching. Teaching kids is really just a great thing. I highly recommend anyone that loves anything they do, teach it to kids. So my life here in Larchmont really grew into my painting and me teaching painting. And it just enriched everything. It's been great.
So how would you describe what we see on the screen? How would you describe your paintings?
Oh, well, they're abstract paintings, obviously. They're highly motivated by movement and energy. They're trying to move things in the psyche and in the person. But that's certainly what I'm going after when I do it. I pour a lot of the paint. I use acrylics, epoxy resin, blow torches, graphite, and inks. And it becomes like a dialogue, like a conversation between the different materials and how they affect one another. You know, who dominates and who backs off and what comes forward and what talks to me. That's pretty much what goes on in my studio.
When I checked out your website, I saw a picture of, I guess it's a pair of your work shoes.
Yeah.
And the first word that came to my mind is, what a mess. So are you a messy artist?
Not a mess. I'm a very messy painter, I have to say. I advocate that with my students. Yeah, I spent years. So when I went to School of Visual Arts, I was an illustrator. And so I spent years doing illustration, which is very careful and contained. And it became clear to me pretty early on, I would say in my late 20s, that that wouldn't sustain me. I had at that point read Vasily Kandinsky's Concerning the Spiritual in Art, and that pretty much just turned the corner for me. And then I knew that control was not going to be part of the long haul in the future.
But by contrast, when I look at your jewelry, I see simplicity and elegance, and you like to use crystals. So
Yes.
what happened? There seems to be a lot of control in the jewelry.
So the thing about the jewelry is that the jewelry is like the meditation that takes me down from the painting. So the painting is like I have to go to war, I get revved up, it's pretty intense physically. The paintings are large and I'm throwing them around and making things happen. It's pretty intense physical experience. So the jewelry like takes all the energy down. I wouldn't say that they're controlled as much as I use very, very small pieces, but I'm looking for the same thing in terms of vibration. So like that book that I referenced about Kandinsky, he teaches you that like colors vibrate and relationships between things affect one another. So the same thing's happening in the jewelry. It's just on a very like almost microscopic scale because I'm using tiny pieces. But same intention and hopefully with a pleasing goal.
Yeah, this is not your first time on LMC Media. I saw that last year you were among 3 artists at a show called Resonance.
Yes.
That was at the, I believe it was at the BI's
G87 in Larchmont.
gallery in Larchmont. And you said something interesting. You said you thought of yourself as a farmer.
Mm-hmm.
That your paintings begin with a seed and then you see what happens. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I really feel like I have to plant something and then I have to exercise a lot of patience in letting it grow. So I reference, the idea of the farmer in that way. But if I were to, if you were to say, if I were to walk into my studio and to have a certain amount of colors or paints and you were to say to me, what is your intention? I honestly couldn't answer you where the painting was going to go or where it was going to land. So in that way, I really do feel like I have to surrender and give over. And I believe nature asks us to do that all the time. And I just feel like that's like how a farmer has to do it. You've got to like plant something and have faith and go with it. And that's kind of how I feel.
In your process, do you begin a painting and finish it at the same time, or does it develop over a period of days?
No, it can take months. They could probably, if I allowed them, let them go years. So there's layers and layers to the paintings. I couldn't imagine if it just happened and was there for me, but it's not how my process goes. It's a dialogue. So I go back and forth for a long time. There's a relationship between creating and then destroying. So pulling something up and then knocking it back and fighting back and forth between that. And that takes time because of drying in between. Without the in-between drying time, you would get mud. So in order to hold on to the color.
Do the people who buy your work, do they tell you what they see in it or what attracted them to it?
I mean, some people have, some people haven't. I mean, it's just diverse. I couldn't say that there's a predominant response other than, I do think that they're pretty energetic, the paintings, so I think they have a response to that. Like, that feels good in my living room and they'll talk to me like that often. But I wouldn't say anything outside of that.
And how has the COVID-19 affected your work?
So, COVID, it's pretty interesting to me as an artist. Obviously, this has been really, really difficult. And I had a lot of intense stuff happen up in the beginning of it. It's been a great comfort to have my studio. And it's been a great comfort to have the quiet. So COVID did really enforce an awful lot of solitude. So that is a good thing for an artist in their studio, So it has its good and its bad.
Yeah. The best place for people to see your work right now is your website.
My website, yes.
And we have that up on the screen now. And I saw that you're going to be blogging about art, but you haven't put anything up there yet. What are you going to be blogging about?
So, that grew out of my students. I started out teaching children and then began teaching adults. And my adult students said to me, well, put stuff on the website, because I had to start teaching on Zoom. And they were saying, you can post on the website and we can work through, because the classes would end too quick and you'd be in the middle of things, and Zoom has its limits. And in all honesty, I have not gotten to it, but I hope to. I just hope to. I'm going to start teaching again in September. I take the summers off. I just go out to the beach and I work in my studio out there. So that's my fall project.
Maureen, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Now you can go back to the beach and say hello to your little dog who was barking in the background.
Sorry about that. That's Ozzy. It was nice talking with you, Mike. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And thanks, folks, for watching. And keep tuning in to LMC Media for more interesting programs like Community Conversation.